This is Radio Health Journal. I'm Nancy Benson. This week, things to consider when it comes to pet food.
Obesity affects up to 2/3 of dogs and cats that present to their veterinarian, so it is the most common nutritional disorder that veterinarians are faced with on a daily basis.
Should your dog or cat go vegan or gluten-free? When Radio Health Journal returns.
I'm Reed Pence, the producer and host of Radio Health Journal. If you like listening to Radio Health Journal, you'll also like our sister show, Viewpoints, which covers a wide array of topics from education to history to the environment. Here's a preview of what they're covering this week on Viewpoints.
Aging or age is the most important risk factor for almost every disease we deal with in adult medicine.
Uncovering the mysteries of aging and why some people age slower than others. Then,
every time you go into the kitchen, you're worried, like, oh, if this doesn't turn out, it's going to be, I'm a failure. And we have these sort of mean voices in our head.
Learning to cook without the worries of failure. I'm Marty Peterson.
And I'm Gary Price. These stories in depth this week on your public affairs magazine, Viewpoints.
Listen to Radio Health Journal and Viewpoints on your favorite radio station. And subscribe and listen anytime on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and Spotify. Also, follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Radio Health Journal.
For the last 40 years or so, Americans have heard nonstop that we eat too much and exercise too little, with the result that 2/3 of us are overweight or obese. It turns out that our pets have the same problem.
Obesity affects up to 2/3 of dogs and cats that present to their veterinarian, so it is the most common nutritional disorder that veterinarians are faced with on a daily basis.
That's Dr. Valerie Parker, Associate Professor of Veterinary Clinical Sciences at The Ohio State University Veterinary Medical Center. She's a specialist in small animal internal medicine and nutrition.
Most of the time, people are feeding good quality commercial pet foods, and a lot of pet foods are formulated to be calorically dense, and they're also very palatable. So it doesn't take a lot of volume to get a lot of pets fairly overweight pretty quickly. Most people have absolutely no idea how many calories a day their pets are eating. So the first and foremost problem is excessive caloric intake. And to a much lesser extent, although people want more emphasis to be placed on exercise, to a much lesser extent does exercise or caloric expenditure influence most of our pets.
Parker says dogs and cats are members of the Clean Plate Club. If food is in front of them, they'll eat it, even if they've already had their fill. So it's up to us to measure out the right amount of food for them.
Most commercial pet foods are so palatable that they will keep eating. It's just like people, right? Like if you put a bowl of any good food, I mean, I was going to say ice cream because that's like one of my favorites, but I will keep eating it until my belly hurts if I'm not thinking, And so dogs and cats can't apply any logic to their intake. They're not going to think, oh, I'd better not eat 500 extra calories a day today. It really is up to pet owners to determine what is an appropriate amount to feed. And because most pet owners really don't know, that's a good conversation to have with your veterinarian, is what is an appropriate amount of calories to feed. And most pet food bags are going to overestimate a pet's needs.
One way to counteract that is to ask your vet what your pet's resting metabolic rate is and use that to measure out food. Commercial pet foods are fine, Parker says. In fact, she says that people who make their own pet food to control the ingredients are usually making a big mistake. Most homemade recipes don't provide a balanced diet without lots of input from a veterinary nutritionist, so stick to the commercial brands.
I think they're mostly okay. I feed my pets commercial pet foods and always have, probably always will. It comes down to finding a company that is well-known and reputable that you're comfortable with. It comes down to considering the individual animal and what its nutritional needs are and finding options that will work for you and the pet.
However, one thing not to do is to assume that if a food fat is good for you, it must be good for your dog or cat too. For example, going vegan.
Vegan diets can absolutely be harmful for certain dogs and cats. Dogs and cats were not designed to be vegan. There are certain nutrients that are much harder to come by eating vegan diets, and multiple studies have investigated commercial, both vegetarian and vegan diets and found that there are significant amino acid deficiencies and nutrient deficiencies that can occur. It gets even more complicated if you're trying to do a home-prepared vegan or vegetarian diet, because probably one of the most severe adverse consequences that can result is the formation of dietary-associated dilated cardiomyopathy, so a certain heart disease that dogs can get eating vegan or vegetarian diets if they're not getting the proper amount of amino acids in their diet, or if they're eating certain other ingredients that are affecting the bioavailability of those amino acids.
And yes, Parker says she's seen plenty of people making their dog or cat go vegan. Other owners have had their pets go gluten-free, even though Irish setters are the only dogs ever connected to gluten intolerance. One other popular trend is to feed dogs a so-called barf diet, bones and raw food. Parker says there's danger in that too, to both you and your dog.
My biggest concern is usually with the home-prepared raw diets, because many studies have shown that most home-prepared diets that dogs and cats are eating do not provide complete and balanced nutrition. So my biggest concern is for nutritional inadequacy. And then beyond that, I do worry, especially in some animals more than others, and also for their owners, I do worry about the risk for infectious disease transmission.
Parker says the bottom line on feeding your dog or cat is to know what your pet's nutritional goals are and follow them.
Every dog or cat should mostly be fed a complete and balanced diet. Every dog and cat should be fed to achieve and maintain its optimal body weight and body condition score. And then if an individual animal has any certain disease process, then that animal may need specific other nutritional modifications that should prompt a discussion with a veterinarian. But the most important thing is feed a complete and balanced diet from a reputable company and feed to achieve and maintain optimal body condition.
Parker says people want to do what's best for their pets, but that doesn't mean applying human standards to their diets. She says a talk with your veterinarian is always a good idea if you have questions. Or you can find a nutrition toolkit from the World Small Animal Veterinary Association at wsava.org/nutrition-toolkit. You can also find that link on our website, radiohealthjournal.org. Our studio producer is Jason Dickey. I'm Nancy Benson. Coming up next week on Radio Health Journal.
At about 1,300 people dying every day due to COVID-19, that translates into about 300 children losing a caregiver every single day.
The vast number of children left behind when their parents die of COVID.
Then why the rules of war often don't protect hospitals and healthcare workers.
You have to distinguish between a health facility, a hospital, or a clinic, and a military object. And you have to take steps to minimize harm. But it's inconvenient.
All that and more on Radio Health Journal.
And that's Radio Health Journal for this week. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram to learn more. And check Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and Spotify for a library of past programs. Plus, you'll always find previous segments and information about our guests at radiohealthjournal.org. Join us again next week for another edition of Radio Health Journal.